Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is a follow-up to a video I done last night where I was shocked, stunned, embarrassed and loads of different emotions how I felt after our First Minister conducted himself in front of an audience there to, as a sort of vigil to what happened in the 7th of October 2 years ago just coming up, and it was to do that on Sunday outside Holyrood. And the First Minister was there as a guest, got up to speak, and I was completely flabbergasted with what I heard coming out of his mouth. So I've got a great guest tonight who was actually at the event. And Sammy, how are you this evening?
I'm very well, thank you, Craig. Very well. Looking forward to our chat.
No problem. Now, you and I have we bumped into each other randomly a couple of weeks ago at our mutual friend's business, and we got introduced. And last night when I was putting this video out, I thought, I recognise that gentleman in the background of the stage, and lo and behold, it was you. You were there last night. In what capacity were you at the event, Sammy?
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful for you calling me a gentleman. That shows you don't know me that well. But the event was organised by Glasgow Friends of Israel, which is the organisation that I chair, and most of the work was done by my wife, Vicky. And as I said, we organised it the same way as we organised one last year, which was at Kelvin Grove, which was a year after the terrible massacre on October the 7th, 2023. And yesterday was the second anniversary. We had hoped, actually, that the hostages would be released by then, based on the plan that President Trump put forward to Hamas. But even as we speak today, Hamas have not yet answered whether they've accepted the deal or not. So we're still waiting to hear what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm. So was Mr. Swinney, was he an invited guest by your group, or did he just decide to turn up? How did that work out?
No, John Swinney was in touch. We have an organisation in Glasgow called the Jewish Council of Scotland. They represent the Jewish community. My understanding is that John Swinney's office contacted the Jewish Council of Scotland and asked whether he could come and speak. And they contacted myself, and we said, of course, he can come and speak. And that's why he was there.
Now, his speech, being non-Jewish, non-Israeli, I think I know maybe less than a handful of people who are either Jewish, Israeli, or both. So I don't have a lot of skin in the game, as you would say. So as a sort of independent observer on that, I was shocked and stunned. Now, what I'll do, just before we go on to the next question, I'll just put a little clip of what Mr. Swinney said here so that those who are watching who haven't seen it can understand why we're having this video.
Recognition of a Palestinian state, because I think it is the because I believe it. Because I believe it to be the necessary route to securing peace in the Middle East. And all of us who want to live. And all of us who want to live. All of us who believe in the sanctity of human life believe there must be peace to enable human life to be protected. Those values will underpin all that I do as First Minister to bring our communities together and to ensure that everyone in our society can live in peace and solidarity and safety in our community. And those will be the actions that my government takes. On this occasion, I stand with you in remembrance. I stand with you in remembrance of those who have lost their lives. I stand in solidarity demanding the return of the hostages, and I stand with you in demanding peace for all of our communities, and that we may live in harmony together in our country. Thank you for enabling me to speak today. Thank you.
So now that we've seen what happened yesterday, Sammy, you being both Jewish and I believe an Israeli, I may have that wrong, so do correct me if I'm wrong. How did you feel when the First Minister of Scotland was stood on that stage wanting to talk more about the state of Palestine and the problem with the hostages?
Can I just say that I was actually pleased that he wanted to come, because it was good to get the First Minister's support for the Jewish community. And I hope that's what the conversation will be about. But it's like a football game. It was an interview. It was a speech of two halves. The first half, he said all the right things. And as you probably heard, there was no real heckling. And he was listened to most of the time with quite a lot of respect. But at one point, after about 4 minutes, he decided that he was going to justify why the Scottish government had recognized a Palestinian state. And he no sooner got that sentence out of his mouth that everybody started booing and heckling and shouting. And we're very disappointed why he had to introduce that topic into what was, in essence, a memorial and a vigil for people who have been kidnapped and people who have been killed. There was no need at all to introduce the question of Palestine. And I think he made a great mistake by doing that.
Now, obviously, I was a bit disappointed, and I can only imagine how the people in the audience would have felt. But the audience, I take it the makeup of the audience was predominantly Jewish people or Israeli people or people who are friends of either Jewish or Israeli people. I would imagine that's how the audience makeup looked.
Well, it certainly wasn't purely a Jewish audience. We have, as you suggest, there are many supporters of Israel in Scotland, and we're very pleased to have their support. And I would suggest that the people were about half and half, Jewish and non-Jewish. But everybody that was there clearly was a supporter of the state of Israel and is very keen to see an end to the war and the release of all the hostages.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that was the whole point of that. And obviously, remember those who unfortunately were taken hostage but haven't made it through the end of that particular journey. So, was the audio response that we all heard in the video, was that sort of widespread throughout all those who were present last night?
I would say almost to a man or to a woman. Most of the people felt that he should not have introduced that topic, and he was trying to justify it, which of course most of the people don't agree. Even I don't agree. Why would the Scottish government rush to recognize a non-existent state? Because Palestine is a non-existent state. There's something called the Montevideo Convention, which defines the criteria for the existence of a state. There are 4 criteria, and Palestine doesn't meet any of them. So I don't understand why the UK and Scotland had to recognize the state of Palestine. And what they should have said to Hamas is, well, if you, Hamas, stop fighting, lay down your arms, release all the hostages, then in turn, for you doing that, we will recognize the state of Palestine. But they didn't. They didn't put any conditions on Hamas, but all the conditions were put on Israel, including the demand to agree to a ceasefire. But ceasefire is a two-sided thing. Israel can't agree to a ceasefire if Hamas doesn't. So it was a real political error, and I think very naive to expect Israel to respond in the way that the demand was made by Keir Starmer. And as I say, I do not understand what the rush was. Palestine has not existed for 78 years. Why did it have to be done within 2 weeks? It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And as a sort of observer of the situation and a keen observer of the situation over there, I find it most peculiar that if someone demands Palestine is to be a state, or you hear the songs which are from the river to the sea, which is obviously the River Jordan, and to the west, why that perception of Palestine? Because if that's based on the British mandate called Palestine, then that takes in land to the east of the Jordan, which is current day Jordan, once Transjordan. But what I see as an outsider is when the calls are to have recognised Palestine, it's only a portion of what was the British mandate, and that confuses me somewhat. And to actually call this thing while there's still conflict and a lot of negotiation to be done, it did seem rather strange to me. But the one thing that worried me more than anything else was the urgency to have a Palestine embassy set up. And I couldn't understand why so many Scottish MSPs had to be present there, and an MP, because I saw Flynn was there. We saw Flynn, we saw Anna Sarwar, we saw John Swinney, all at the top table when this thing was being sort of launched, as it were. But what concerned me is, and you can maybe again rectify if I say anything in error here, but Palestine consists of West Bank and Gaza, and Gaza is currently run and administered by Hamas, and I'm quite sure those who control West Bank are of similar style. So what you get is you get an embassy, which gives you a lot of permissions. You have diplomatic immunity. You can bring packages in and out the country without being checked at airports and going through normal things that you would check. We've basically handed that to a state, in inverted commas, who are run by a prescribed terror group. That allows that prescribed terror group now to dictate who works in the embassy and who's given these privileges. And as a citizen of the United Kingdom, that concerns me somewhat. Are my fears stupid, Sammy, as somebody that's more in tune with what's going on over there?
Well, you've actually made my case for me, Craig, because all the reasons you explained why Palestine cannot be a state, one of the criteria is to have a recognized government. So Gaza is currently governed by Hamas. Hamas is an internationally prescribed terrorist organization. How can anybody suggest that they could be in charge of a state? So it's crazy what they've done. And you're right, they get all these benefits now. And the guy that they've got in the UK is a guy called Zumlot. He has been calling himself an ambassador for a very long time, even though Palestine was not a state. But now, as you suggest, it is actually a state, and Zumlot is an ambassador. But I can tell you why all these people were down there, including Flynn and Anna Sawa, for the votes. They're doing it for the votes. They want the Muslim vote. And by being there and being seen there with Zumlot, they are trying to say, we don't care about Israel. We only care about Palestine. And therefore, can you please vote for us? That's the reason they did it. And you could say that even his appearance at the vigil yesterday may have been to show people that by being there, he was going to get heckled by the Zionists, say, and he was brave enough to be there and show himself to be worthy of the Muslim support in Scotland.
I think it would be crazy and bizarre to suggest that what he said wasn't his plan. You would imagine somebody in his position has a host of advisors round about him and knew exactly what he was. He's a man that's used to giving speeches, and he would know exactly what he was going to talk about when he was there. And that again is something I found rather distasteful. And you're right, I think the only conclusion we can take from that was to say to another segment of society that, I'm more on your side than these people even in front of me who are here for a vigil. I think as a mark of respect, the best thing to do would be for him not to have turned up yesterday. That would have been more respectful than what he'd done. And what happens now? What do the Friends of Israel do now? And what your section of society? What happens next with John Swinney?
Well, can I go back to your last comment? Because I think had he come and really put forward his view that he would like to support the Jewish community in Scotland, he would like to make sure we don't see a rise in anti-Semitism. He would like to make sure that we all feel safe, which we do not at the moment. Almost every Saturday there are hate marches taking place in Scottish cities, and the Jewish community is very, very afraid. So if he'd come along and said, I want to work with you, I want to make sure that you're going to be safe, then that would have been fantastic. And that's where he should have stopped. And unfortunately, he decided that. Now, what happens next? Well, I don't know. Um, there is a Jewish community that has a relationship with the Scottish government, and I'm hoping that contact will continue, and eventually we might get to a point where John Swinney understands he's got two different communities, and he has to make sure both of them feel safe. And at the moment, one of them doesn't.
Yeah, no, and I think it is pretty horrific, and I hope there's no further incidents like we've seen, obviously in Manchester just a few days ago. But
Oh, absolutely.
it reminded me of quite a scary situation I found myself in almost a year ago. It's November last year, Sammy, and I visited Copenhagen. It's a beautiful city. The first time I'd been there before, but only at the airport. So the first time that I managed to see it. And we were walking around this beautiful city centre, and we turned right in this cobbled area, and I was confronted by a soldier with a rifle on the street. I then noticed that the bollards were up at either length of this street. And I was shocked because my initial thing was I've just turned into some situation here, a live situation. So I scanned the area and I saw that there was two cars at the other end with four soldiers and the same at this end. But there was nothing going on in the middle. And I said to the guy, "Excuse me, am I okay to go down this street? Is there a live situation I should be aware of?" He says, "No, we're just here for protection." And I went, "All right, I'm in an area that I shouldn't be. I mean, it's a city I don't know." He says, "No, we're here every Saturday at the synagogue." My jaw dropped, and I thought, is that where society is today, that a Western European capital has to put armed people in a street that had these bollards that come out of the road, so that it's not a temporary thing. So this obviously been going on for some time. I thought, what terrible. Now, regardless of what place of worship that is, whether it's a synagogue, a mosque, a church, or whatever, that didn't matter to me. That initially I thought any place of worship that you can't go and do what your business without having an armed presence outside it is pretty disgusting, and it's a part of society that I certainly don't want to be part of, where that's the norm. But it's that kind of. Surely we're not that bad in Scotland, are we?
Well, we don't have armed soldiers outside synagogues, but we do have, every time there's a service in any synagogue, there are security guards outside. And in fact, one of the people that was killed last week in Manchester was a security guard, and he was actually guarding the gate, I expect, and he was killed by the terrorists. Now, not only synagogues, but every Jewish school in the UK has security guards. How can you explain to young kids who are going to school that these are people who are standing there in order to protect them from people that want to hurt them and harm them? And every Jewish institution, when we have meetings.
So you were talking about the schools and children going to
Well,
schools. I
yeah,
didn't realise it was that bad in Scotland, and that's pretty horrific. And you mentioned the security guard being murdered in Manchester, and again that was something that I picked up on. Then I thought, wow, the security guard shouldn't need to be there in the first place, and the fact that he has to be there and he's lost his life, it just makes a ridiculous situation even more. It just makes it so bizarre. But I hope that we see a stop to this sectarian violence that we're seeing in the streets of the United Kingdom. But I don't think we can hold much hope of it disappearing when those in charge are doing such ridiculous things. So we maybe just need to change them, Sammy, and and hope that the people that replace them are a bit more common sense than the ones that are there just now.
Yeah, I'd also like to make the point that, I mean, one of the reasons the terrorists couldn't get into the synagogue in Manchester is because the doors were locked from the inside. And that's what all of these buildings have to do. They have to lock the doors from the inside so people can't just walk. If you go to a church, you can just walk into a church, and it's wonderful that you can do that. But if you want to enter a synagogue or a Jewish school or a Jewish building, it's going to have security outside. They're going to ask you who you are, why you're coming, do they know you're coming? And it's really, really scary for people to know that that's what's happening. And as I say, for school kids to see security guards outside their school, and they would ask the questions, who are these men? What are they doing there? Why are they there? And how do you explain to a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old that they've got security guards outside to make sure that nobody's going to hurt them? It's absolutely terrible, and it should never have been allowed to get to this stage by any government, whether it's in England or Scotland. It should never have happened. And what they should be doing now is trying to do something about it rather than standing up there and talking about recognizing Palestine.
No, I appreciate that. And Sammy, I can't thank you enough for giving me your time tonight and giving us a sort of more ringside description and what actually happened outside Holyrood yesterday. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, okay, I'll speak to you anytime. Thanks, Craig.
So there we go. What a horrific insight into what happened outside Holyrood. So it appears that Mr. Swinney requested to be there and speak. And certainly it seems as if a plan was hatched for what he would say, because I doubt for any second that what he said in front of these people was not pre-planned. And that is very, very scary. So if you want others to see this video, please hit the like button, put your comments below and share it, because my videos over the last 2 months are not getting shared as much by YouTube as they once did. And if you've not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. And more important than all that, unless you're the type of person who wants to appear that he's got a bit of heartfelt, sincere on our community, to then stand up and do what John Swinney done, then not you, but everyone else, have a great day.